Do not listen to the complaints about nihilism making the 20th century the most violent in history in terms of wars and other acts of violence. Relatively speaking, overall historically, comparing the 20th century to past history, the 20th century started with 1 billion persons on Earth and it ended with 6 billion. Relative to quantity and quality of life, the 20th century was the most peaceful in history. Plus, the violence did not occur as a result of nihilism. The violence of the 20th century, the biggest killers in the 20th century, were the moralists, ethicists, and givers of law trying to create moral and peaceful utopias on Earth through the two sides of the same coin called communism and fascism. Immorality, as with hate, has rational limits, because immorality and hate fail to give meaning to life and to death. Thus, though they may kill thousands, they do not allow for the clear conscience of a moral busybody willing to kill millions in order to achieve what their life's meaning says life ought to be. As contemplated in other places in this podcast, morality, like love, is a relationship individuals have to that which gives meaning to their lives. It is completely subjective and relative. When one morality is able to dominate others, you have an ethics, which is a relative social construct. Ethics ultimately is simply the morality of the ruling class for any particular social group. When an ethics gets a monopoly on violence, it becomes law, which is the ultimate social construct of power, by giving the ruling class a monopoly on violence. The final attribute for all morality, ethics, and most obviously law, is violence. Violence is the final attribute for all morality, ethics, and law. The willingness violently to enforce upon others the meaning of life for that particular morality, ethics, or law is an attribute of all of these. All these individual and social constructs divide the world into the good and the evil, the moral and the immoral, and thus into those who must be punished and those who must do the punishing. Without this attribute of violence, one does not have a morality, an ethics, or law, only habit, courtesy, or custom. There is no morality, nor the upper stages of violence called ethics or law, without these having an attribute of violence. Even the morality of a pacifist has a final attribute of violence. A pacifist would rather die than kill another to save their own life, because non-violence gives meaning to their lives. So, the final attribute of their morality is still violence, but it is violence against themselves. Thus, they are usually harmless in an individual sense, but by their willingness to commit suicide and thus be lost to social construction, are still a danger to maintaining social vitality. The violent suicide of a banzai charge for a God, humanity, and duty is different in degree, but not in substance, to the suicide by pacifism of anyone who does not defend themselves from such a banzai charge for the same reasons of God, humanity, and duty. The 21st century will be a century of billions of moralities, just as it appears that it will be a century of billions of genders. As all philosophers of history from Plato to George Orwell have concluded, in such a reality in which the concept of objective fact has disappeared, democracy will eventually turn to anarchy, which in turn unavoidably becomes tyranny. As has been contemplated in other areas of this podcast, such a result may not be a bad thing, because democracies are run by ruling classes, as are any other form of politics. Class struggle is history. As long as we continue to struggle and there is a will to fight, there will be a will to power, which will allow us to fight whatever the future stage of tyranny will be, so we can continue to discover, explore, and conquer the universe.